In the quiet, controlled calm of a California hospital room in October 2011, time finally won. Not in a dramatic collapse, not in a public moment, but slowly, privately, the way it always does. The machines were steady. The room was quiet. Outside, the world kept moving, emails sent, markets opened, products shipped. But for Steve Jobs, the man who spent his life racing against the clock, time had closed the distance. Most people remember Steve Jobs as a visionary, a genius, a perfectionist, a man who bent technology to his will. What fewer people understand is that his entire life and his entire philosophy was shaped by a single, relentless relationship with time. Because Steve Jobs didn't just build products, he built urgency. To understand why, you have to start with a simple truth that rarely appears in biographies. Steve Jobs lived as if time was always running out, long before it actually was. From the beginning, Jobs moved faster than the world around him, not just intellectually, but existentially. He didn't believe in gradual improvement. He believed in leaps, in compression, in skipping steps, in bending timelines so the future arrived sooner than it was supposed to. That philosophy shaped everything. Apple wasn't built to evolve slowly. It was built to arrive suddenly. Products weren't refined over decades. They were revealed as inevitabilities, finished, polished, as if they had always existed, waiting to be uncovered. Behind that illusion was pressure. Jobs demanded impossible timelines, brutal deadlines, unreasonable intensity. He collapsed years of work into months, months into weeks. Teams weren't asked if something could be done, they were told when it would be done. This wasn't just management style, it was a worldview. Jobs believed time was the enemy. That delay was decay, that waiting meant losing. In his mind, if you didn't ship first, you might as well not ship at all. The future belonged to whoever arrived there earliest, and for a long time he was right. The Macintosh, the iPod, the iPhone, each one felt like a rupture in time, a moment when the future jumped forward and left everything else behind. Competitors didn't just lose market share, they lost relevance. Entire industries were forced to compress decades of evolution into a few years just to survive. Steve Jobs didn't just change products, he changed the pace of life, but that pace came at a cost. Inside Apple, time was never neutral. It was weaponized. Meetings ran long, nights disappeared, weekends collapsed. People lived inside a permanent sprint, fueled by adrenaline and belief. Fear of failure, fear of missing the moment. Fear of being too slow. Jobs didn't tolerate patience. He tolerated results. This created brilliance, but it also created fragility, because when everything is urgent, nothing is sustainable. Jobs himself embodied this contradiction. He preached simplicity but lived intensity. He preached focus but demanded obsession. He preached presence but lived ahead of the present, always in the next product, the next reveal, the next moment that would matter. And then quietly, time did something he couldn't control. In 2003, Steve Jobs was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, not the most aggressive kind, not immediately fatal. A slow-moving form that could often be treated successfully with early surgery. And here's where the story stops being about innovation and becomes about time. Jobs delayed treatment, not for weeks, for months. He explored alternative therapies, diets, Eastern medicine, supplements, cleanses. He believed deeply that the body could be brought back into alignment, that the future could be negotiated, that time could be managed, even biologically. This wasn't ignorance, it was consistency. The same man who believed technology could bend reality believed the same about mortality, that with enough will, enough insight, enough control, time could be slowed, redirected, outsmarted. But time doesn't negotiate. By the time Jobs agreed to surgery, the cancer had progressed. Treatment continued for years. Periods of recovery followed by relapse, each return more difficult than the last. Each delay compounding the cost, and yet publicly Jobs never slowed. Product launches continued, keynotes dazzled, Apple's valuation exploded. The iPhone reshaped daily life for billions. From the outside, it looked like victory. But internally, time was narrowing. This is the paradox of Steve Jobs, the man who gave the world devices that promised efficiency, connection, and saved time, spent his own life racing against a clock he refused to acknowledge. As his health declined, the compression intensified, products launched faster, cycles shortened, expectations escalated. Jobs worked not like a man building a future, but like a man trying to outrun one. The iPhone wasn't just a product, it was a deadline, and Apple's culture absorbed this urgency. The company became synonymous with speed, secrecy, and perfection. Under pressure, that model spread outward into Silicon Valley, into startups, into work culture itself. Move fast, break things, ship now, fix later. This wasn't just business philosophy, it was temporal philosophy. A belief that time is something to dominate, not inhabit. The long-term consequences of that belief are still unfolding. Workdays blurred, boundaries eroded, availability became expected. People began measuring worth by output per unit time. Life became a series of sprints without recovery. Steve Jobs didn't invent this mindset, but he legitimized it. And the irony is that while his products promised simplicity, they accelerated life. Notifications collapsed attention. Emails followed people home. Work escaped offices and lived in pockets. Time sped up. Jobs once said that death is life's greatest invention, that it clears out the old to make room for the new. It's a beautiful quote, but it also reveals something deeper. An acceptance of impermanence paired with a refusal to slow down within it. Steve Jobs didn't fear death, he feared wasted time, and that fear shaped everything. By the time he died in 2011, Apple was the most valuable company in the world. His legacy was secure, his influence unmatched, but his life story left behind a quieter question, one that rarely gets asked. What does it cost to live as if time is always running out? Because urgency produces innovation, but it also produces exhaustion. Compression produces breakthroughs, but it also produces fragility. Speed creates dominance, but it erodes endurance. Steve Jobs lived fast in a way that most people can't afford to. For the rest of society, the adoption of his tempo created a mismatch. Human bodies didn't evolve for constant acceleration. Minds didn't evolve for permanent urgency. Lives weren't designed to be optimized like products, and yet that is the world his success helped normalize. This is why Steve Jobs isn't just a tech story, he's a longevity story. A story about what happens when brilliance is paired with speed and what gets sacrificed along the way. Not just years of life, but depth of living, stillness, margin, recovery. Jobs changed how the world thinks about the future. But he also changed how the world experiences time. The tragedy is not that he died. Everyone does. The tragedy is that his philosophy taught millions to live as if slowing down was failure. In the end, time did what it always does. Caught up, the future arrived, the body gave out, the clock kept moving, and what remains is not just a legacy of products, but a cautionary tale about urgency mistaken for meaning. I'm Karim, and this is Cinematic Longevity. Subscribe if you want stories about time, endurance, and the hidden costs real lives pay for progress, because when the innovation fades, what remains is how we chose to spend our time.